Hello, hello, hello. How's it going out there, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Mannimal Research. We are so glad you guys can join us. Those of you that are watching it now, and those of you that will be watching it later, we sure do appreciate it. Want to start out by asking everybody that hasn't already done so to go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you don't mind. Show us some love, guys. We appreciate it. We believe it or not, we do work hard on these shows. It's not just something that we throw together, last minute. So we do put some effort into it. And as always, run over to manimalresearch.com. Check out the website. There you can report your encounters and also get information, about possibly becoming a member of our group and getting out and doing some research yourself. And if you guys report your encounters or refer us to someone that reports their encounters, we be happy to have you come on as one of our guests and talk about your experiences. All that out of the way, I am joined tonight, as always, by my partner in crime, Mr. Ricky Weaver. How's it going tonight, buddy?
Going great, man. You?
Doing good. Doing good, man. We've been flooded out by rain. How's it been down your way?
We've had rain yesterday. Today it's been a nice day out. I actually got out yesterday. Me and Jonathan did, and a friend of mine, and put cameras up all the way around the house.
Okay.
I'm putting in a new security system here, so I think I got three of them hooked up. Got about five more to go.
Very, very cool. You gonna try to get out in the woods and check on the big guys, any?
Well, I've got this doctor's appointment coming up tomorrow, and it's going to be according to what comes curtails with it. What they want to do, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know, got me kind of worried, but hey, in today's society, today's world, you don't know how long you got or what's going to take you out. So I just
Well, we said a little something about last week, but I know I am, and I ask everybody else to, if you can, if you pray, if you talk to God, ask that you say a little prayer for Ricky. There, he's got some medical issues that he's concerned about, and again, he'll talk about it when he's ready. But y'all keep him in your thoughts. I know I am. So yeah, we're looking out for you, Ricky. I'm praying for you, buddy.
hey man, I appreciate it. Need all I can get.
Good deal. Well, tonight we have Mr. Paul Neighbours that's going to come on. Paul is a resident of Lebanon, Tennessee, just about an hour or so north of me, actually. I've been through Lebanon quite a few times on my way up to Knoxville to watch my beloved Volunteers play ball. So I'm familiar with that area up there. But he's got a farm up there with over 300 acres where he's had some fishy crazy stuff that's been going on up there. His son actually had a sighting that has been recorded on the BFRO. So that is just one of the things that Paul will be coming on to talk about tonight, and we appreciate him doing it. Sure do. Ricky, you got anything else before we bring Paul on?
No, man, let's start the show.
All right, buddy, let's do it. Mr. Paul, how's it going, buddy?
Hey guys, glad to be on the show.
Well, we are glad to have you. Before we get started, I want to apologize to everybody that's listening. We seem to be getting just a little bit of feedback. Seems like it might be on my end, just when I talk, but it seems like it's a little bit better. We worked on it a little bit before the show, but apologize in advance for that. Like I was telling everybody, Mr. Paul, you got some farmland up in Tennessee. Tell us a little bit about that property.
Yeah, we've got a place that we hunt on, and it's in Lebanon, Tennessee, not too far off of Highway 70. And it's a little over 300 acres. And we've been hunting there probably since, I'm going to say, 1994, 93, somewhere like that. We've been hunting this place. And we have, me personally, I've only seen a couple of things that really, really, question me up there. We've never been, attacked. We've never had anything mischievous or mean happen to us up there. The first thing that I can remember ever seeing was during turkey season. The farm has a rock wall that goes down it, and the slaves built that. This farm is, I know the house was done in 1890, so it's a century farm, but there's a rock wall there, and in this corner of the rock wall, there's some bamboo that grow up. And I've always used to get inside that bamboo when it was coming turkey season. That would be a great blind for me. But that lasted a year, maybe two. And I come up during deer season, and every stalk of that bamboo had been not broken, but pulled up out of the ground, because you could still see the roots, and stacked like a teepee over in the corner where the end of that rock wall stopped at. And I remember thinking, well, I know anybody been back here, and if they wanted this bamboo, for a cane poles or whatever, they would have sure took it. But it was so kind of neatly stacked where all the tips went in. It's like a teepee. And so I didn't, wow, that's different. And this was the year, this is probably 90, 99, 2000, when we started seeing deer disappear when we would field dress them. And this it would happen maybe one or two deer that we killed. You got 3 or 4 guys up there, and if they get 3 deer apiece, that's a lot of deer. Well, some of us, we had a camp up there, and we would field dress our deer. Finally, some of us would field dress it here, there, just wherever we wanted to. But finally, the landowner, guy that was with it, owned it at that time, he said, can y'all just do these deer back there where the pond is, and just instead of all over in the fields. And I said, sure. So we started doing those deer right there. When we did that, you could, how could I explain this to make it accurate, is we could field dress a deer and leave the gut pile, get the deer loaded up in the back of the truck, and go, I'd say 80 yards, go to the house. Mr. Lee, here's the buck we got, or doe, or whatever, and come back, and that gut pile is gone. And I'm thinking, man, the buzzards they're quick, and I'm looking up, and there's no buzzards. There's no buzzards at all. So
now, would you see any drag marks, any scatterings?
that was the next thing. I thought, well, what about a bobcat? Because I have killed a few bobcats up there. I thought maybe a bobcat or a coyote. So I started looking for blood drag, where maybe, and there was none. Because I'm walking behind it and I'm looking, and it was as if it was all picked up and gone, because behind it, it was kind of high. The field, it had a lot of that hay grass. It would have been knocked down if something had dragged it. It would have pushed all that down. It was all still standing. So eventually it kept on, and it got to be where it was almost every deer that that we would kill would disappear pretty quick. Or if you got one late, you went up there and you field dressed it, went to camp, and when you came back, of course, it'd be gone from overnight. Well, okay, that's a long time. That many hours, coyotes can come in there, take it and clean it up. They're going to leave. It's going to be strewn all over because they're tearing it apart. But this was happening after the morning hunt, and within so many minutes. So you're looking, at maybe 7 minutes, maybe 10 at the most, to go up to the house, and chit chat with a guy, show him what you got, thank him, and come back, and it's gone. So that's when I started thinking something's going on for something to remove a gut pile like that so quickly and not leave any remains. So we kept hunting, and nothing really. I know one thing, and all deer hunters have those days when you just don't see anything, and it's just quiet. And you don't see the turkeys, you don't see the deer, you don't see, hardly any squirrels, and you're just like, man, this is just odd, especially for Lebanon. Lebanon has a lot of animals, and kind of the cedars of Lebanon. Our property has a lot of cedars, and it's a lot of fields, small patches of woods, fields, small patches of woods, cattle grazing. A lot of cattle. At that time, we had cattle on one side of us, and on the other side, there wasn't any. But I understand there was no hunting ever allowed on either side of us. So when we went to hunt there, basically we were told, don't go over and hunt, but I got an okay from the man next door. If you see one, you shoot it, you go get it and bring it back. I said, okay, that's good enough, And basically what it was, they didn't want their wife to find out. They were letting us shoot them over there. The guy had some soybeans, and they were tearing up his soybeans, and he said, look, just if you shoot it, get it out of here before my wife sees it. So, okay. So there would be days when you didn't see nothing come out. It was just a different feeling on those days. So here we go to where everything kind of started happening. In 2010, it was July, and the man next door had taken cattle off his property, so it was just open fields. He had a pond over there. The guy on the other side of us, open fields, no cattle. So they'd kind of been left alone for a year or two, and they had gotten really high. The fields were just overgrown. And I told my dad and it's my son, who was, he was young at the time. I said, we got to go up there and bush hog, at least our place. We may have to do it again before bow season opens up, end of September, October, but we need to go up there and go ahead and get a good lick at this. And so that day, it was hot. So I told my dad, I said, look, I'll make so many rounds those fields, and then you take over. And my son, he had a friend with him, and they, young kids, they're just, as you remember, if back when we were young, hunting was everything. If you were a hunter, you just couldn't sleep because you were going hunting the next day. Well, that's how my son was. And he, of course, wanted to go up there just to see if he could see any deer sign. While I was doing bush hogging, he could show his friend the ponds, just show around. I said, okay. So we got out and hooked up the bush hog, and we headed to what we call the big field. It's a pretty big field. It's the size of 2 football fields. And got back there, and I told my dad, I said, I'll start off. And so I got on the tractor, and my son told me, he said, me and my friend, I'm going to go up there and show him the pond. I said, you're going to show her the pond? He said, yeah. He said, I'm going to take her up there. He said, heck, man, because there's always deer tracks at the pond because it's wet. It's kind of marshy right next to it.
Yeah.
So they go up. I see them going up the field, in the middle of the field where it is cut, and going up the logging road. So I get going, and I make almost a full lap around the field. And as I'm coming back up to where this entrance is, where they're coming in the entrance, I'm over here on the side of the field. When I look up, I see these kids running at full speed. I mean, they wouldn't stop it. They were coming back, and I'm thinking, that's odd. They couldn't have been at the pond long. And they've got this look on their face, fear. And I stopped, and because I see that they're coming to me. They're not going to my dad, who's over sitting in the truck waiting, because we're going to sit in the truck and cool off. So as I get finished, we're going to swap out. They didn't go to him. They came to me. And so I shut the tractor off, and they were out of breath. And my son looked at me, and he said, Daddy, he said, big, real, big. And I'm like, did you see a big buck? I said, we got a good one on here. I said, no, Daddy, no. He goes, this, and then his friend, she's trying to talk. She's like, Mr. Paul, this, they call him Bigfoot. Bigfoot. I was like, Bigfoot? I said, man, we've been hunting up here for a good while. I ain't never seen no Bigfoot. And he said, Daddy, I'm not lying. He said, Daddy, it could have caught us. It could have caught us. He said, but it didn't, Daddy. And I said, what? I said, let me shut this tractor off. So I shut it off. I said, what happened? And he said, all right. They're both trying to talk at the same time. I said, one of them, tell me what happened. And so the girl, she told me, she said, Mr. Paul, she said, I went up here, and she said, I know where how the logging road goes. And she said, I'm walking, and Casey's behind me. And he said, you should be coming up on the pond right around this bend. He said, the pond's going to be on the left-hand side in the woods. You'll see it. It's about 20, 30 yards off the logging road. As she was coming up around the bend, she saw something look out from behind a tree and look at her. And she kept walking, and she said, like, what is that? And so she looked again, and at that time it looked out from behind a tree and looked at her again. And that's when she saw how big the head was. And she stopped, and Casey about run into her, and she said, turn around and go back. And she's backing up, and he said, what's wrong? He said, the pond's right here. And she said, turn around and go back. Something's over there. And he's like, there's nothing. She said, he could tell something's wrong with her. She said, let's go back. So they turn around, and they start walking, and she said, something's back there. Well, my son, when he turns around and looks, this thing has stepped out on the logging road, and it is standing there, and it's looking at them. This is what they both of these kids, me and BFRO, Ronnie Powell, she's local BFRO there in Wilson County. We interviewed them both, and both of them said that when they looked at it, it didn't look mean. It looked confused or curious. It was almost, they felt like it was saying, what are you doing here? Like this time of year.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that did go on is just so happens that day we were up there, the men on both sides were baling up hay. They were cutting for hay. So I thought, when I first got there, I was like, man, we're going to have this place looking good. Both sides are cutting. We picked the right day to be up here. And she said, she turned around and looked, and he turned around and looked. And that's when he said, run. And he said, I knew if I turned back, it'd probably be on top of us. He said, and I did. And he said, it was still standing back there. He said, Daddy, it didn't even run after us. But it looked like it was either chewing something, because he said the facial feature looked like it was a confused, but maybe trying to chew something. Half of its jaw was drooping. Whether it had a defect, something wrong with it, but one side of his mouth was open, and he, looked and took off running and never did stop until he got to me.
Now the kids worked with an artist, right, to have a drawing made up.
So we had Sybil come in, who Ronnie had suggested we take Sybil and have her talk to both kids, and let's do some drawings. I said, sure. Because when I got home, there you go. That's the drawing. We went through 4 or 5 drawings till they finally got that one right there. And both kids said, that's it. And my son said, there you see the jaw, that's what she had trouble getting. When she got that look right there, where it looked like the one side of the jaw was drooped or it was chewing on something, that's when they said, you got it. That exactly what it looked like. Did not look mean. Didn't look like it was intended to harm. So they get down there and I get in the truck. Again, this was the year that the cicadas were out. There was noisy cicadas. So I get out, get in the truck. I told Dad, I said, go ahead and because my dad, he's giggling. He's thinking, man, they just, I'm like, Dad, look, he's something's going on. So I get them in there, and I'm going around, and they're both just staring, and I'm like, where's it at? And she said, Mr. Paul, it was right there at that tree. And so I get up there, and as I pull up, I get out, and I listen. There's no cicadas. Quiet. There's no birds. It was dead silent, because I turned my truck off, and they're in the truck. And I said, and I looked back and I said, where at? She said, it was standing right there next to that tree. And after we started taking off and I got down there and looked, she said it went from that tree out to this logging road that fast. And I said, okay. So I'm looking for tracks. Of course, it's July. It's dry. It's hot. You're not going to find tracks because, it's dry. The logging road is dry. And I just said, I better, let's just get out of here because it's too quiet. You just had a feeling, just leave. So got in the truck, went back, finished up bush hogging. They never got out of the truck. We left. Got home. Of course, I sat my son down and I said, listen here, boy. I said, I says, you don't lie to Daddy, and he's a great kid. And he said, Daddy, I'm not lying. He said, this thing was so big, Dad, there's nothing that you could have done. That's what he means. He said, because the shoulders. He said, Dad, he said, I play football, which he played youth football. And he said, I watch football players and I'm watching, my heroes. And he said, there's nothing that compares to the width. And he said, the muscles. He said, man, it's huge. He said, it was just wide. And the muscle you could see under it. He said, it was like it had maybe shoulder pads. He said, because it was so muscular and so wide, he said, scared me more than anything. He said, I didn't think it was, I just had a feeling it wasn't going to do anything, but it just like looking at it and seeing how big, man, there ain't nothing my dad can do about this. I just go tell him, and because this thing's way too big. And so I got to thinking, and I said, listen, I seen something back when I was young in Bethpage, Tennessee. I was 14 years old, and it was the first time my daddy let me hunt by myself. I had a 16 gauge single shot with a deer slug. And he said, I'm going to let you hunt this little ridge right here by yourself. And I said, okay. So I sit down, and I watch this ridge, and I start getting sleepy. And like I say, I'm a 14-year-old kid, probably went skating the night before, and I get sleepy, man. And all of a sudden, as I'm dozing off, I hear this loud crack. I mean, it's loud. And as I look up off this hill, this tree comes down, and it's rolling, and it's rolling. Well, as I look where the tree had come down and start rolling, I look up ahead of it, there's this thing standing there. He don't stand there long. He just like looks and turns around and leaves. That's what made me kind of believe my son, because ever since then, I knew something had pushed that tree down, and it came down the ridge towards me. I don't think it was meant to harm. I think it was more to scare me.
Where was it?
Let me ask you this, Bud. You said that this happened to your son. You said you were 16 when it happened to you. So was this on the same property?
No. That property was in Bethpage.
Oh, okay.
Bethpage is you got Bransford, Bethpage, and then you got Westmoreland, Tennessee.
Right.
And Bethpage is a small town, but it's a hollows, rough. It's hard to hunt. When you get a deer, get ready to climb up, a hollow to get him.
What county is Bethpage in?
Sumner County.
What's that?
Sumner County.
Sumner County?
Yeah. So when I sat Casey down and I told him, and he said, Dad, I said, okay. So I started thinking, I'm not, find out something like this. So I got on the BFRO and did a report. As I had him sitting with me, telling me exactly what happened, and I'm typing it up. Next thing I know, I get a phone call from Ronnie Powell. And Ronnie told me, she said, first of all, she said, I'm going to tell you, your son is not lying. And she said, do not ridicule your son. She said, because what your son has seen doesn't happen to everyday people. I mean, what he has seen is something that hardly anybody gets to see, especially something standing there, full body, standing there looking at you. She said, one thing we do know is these things love watching children. She said, as far as we know, they never take a child. She said, they never take, she said, or she knew. She said, but I do know that she's had some friends, another couple that had some on their property, a couple of exits up from Lebanon. And these things would always watch her kids. And I think they were down at the river. These things would come out and the kids would be playing, and you could see the river, but you could see them walking and watching from tree to tree, watching. And she said, that makes us believe that they love watching children. And she said, I imagine your child was seeing the whole, lot more before they seen it that they were seeing. And so she stopped. She said, wait a minute. She said, I know what farm you're talking about. And next thing we got to talking, and she sure knew the farm that we have now. And she said, yeah. She said, I've been called around there for some things going on. And I said, okay. She said, well, that's when she said, I'm going to put you in touch with Sybil, and let's do a drawing. Okay. So we did that. Could not get my son to hunt by himself. Could not get him to go out there before daylight. This went on for a year and a half. I could not. And my son loves deer hunting and turkey hunting, but he wasn't going to go. I said, son, go ahead and go to that deer stand. No, sir, you go with me. So it got to be where I had to go with him to the deer stand, make sure he was in it, and then I would go to mine because here this, kid who's been hunting since he was, 5 years old, scared to go by himself. So, so that went on, and it had us kind of shook, but we didn't really have much go on for about 2 years. All right. So my son goes up there, and this time he's probably 17, and he said, because it was 16, he just got his truck, and he said, Dad, I went up there to get ready for turkey season, and he said, man, he goes, we always have that spot in the front where we always field dress our deer. He said, I wanted to go in those woods, and I said, man, that's those woods are kind of close to where we camp at. I said, you got our camp, and looks like a dry pond, which it used to be a pond years ago. And the Confederate soldiers used to wash their clothes in that pond. Well, something happened and the pond drained. It didn't hold water. So you had this pond, and it goes up to the top of the hill, and we made a little logging road, and there's another pond. Well, those woods right there, we just never hunted. But it just so happened he goes back there where we usually field dress those deer all the year. And he calls me. He said, Daddy, he said, I went back here. He said, when we used to field dress some deer and they disappear? I said, yeah, right there next to the logging road right there in the front. He said, yeah. He said, I'm going to show you what I found back here. I'm going to take a picture of it. So he takes a picture of this thing that has all sort of what I saw. It was a teepee-shaped deal that all these trees were thrown together. It wasn't very big, but beside it, when I did eventually go up there and I seen it, you had these rocks, and then you had this, like, I call them like a crater where you could sit down in between the rocks and not be seen. It was very rocky in there. And that's one reason I never did hunt it, because I thought, man, if a deer tried to get through, he'd break his legs, because there's rocks and then there's a gully, rock and there's gullies. So I knew right then that's why a lot of the soldiers stayed there, and because they could hide. And I thought, you know what, this thing could have went over there, got these guts, came right over here and sat down inside in between, and you got these rock walls where you can't be seen, and eat. And so when Ronnie and Sybil asked me if they could come to the farm, and I got it cleared, and they came up there and I showed it to them. And immediately she started picking things out and showing me stuff. Broken tree limbs that, they've twisted, broken out, things that I didn't notice. And they saw how big those gullies were in between those rocks. And she said, you're right. She said they could be in here, eat, and they could sit here all day, or get in here whenever you guys drive by. She said, because you never hunted it. I said, we never hunt this area right here. It's just nothing but rocks inside here. And so that was another deal that went on. And then it came to about 5 years ago, I went into the front patch of woods that's right beside that rocky section, and I found 3 of the teepee things in there where somebody's just put all these trees together. And I called Ronnie and I said, Ronnie, there's a lot of these in here. I've counted 3. And she said, well, obviously you've been hunting there for so long. If they were going to do something, they would have done something. But
Yeah.
She said, there's a family that's moved in next door. She said, I seen. I said, yeah, there's a house been next door. She said, do you know the people? And I said, no. I said, they built a nice house. I said, but I will tell you, there is a playground out back. And there's a swing, and they've got a little pool. And she said, oh, my. She said, so children. I said, yeah. And I said, I have seen their children. They're small. And I said, maybe that's where they watch them. You know, they watch from the wood line. And she said, I imagine that happens. And she said, but don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. She said, you know, let me know if anything else happens. Okay. 2 years ago, my son took his friend up. It was bow season. And when they got to that field that we bush hog, that's a field that we kill most of our deer. We hunt the most. We just call it the big field. Well, when they got to the big field and they were going to go get in a tree stand, one of them went and got in his tree stand. My son went to the left to go to get in his tree stand, and they were screamed at. And my son said it was off the hill across from the field, which his friend would have been closest one, because the field is, you know, square. And so that far right square is a deer stand. Right here where you walk into the deer stand, into the field, if you go to the left, there's another deer stand. That's how big that field is. 2 people can hunt it. So Casey got walking, and as soon as it screamed, the guy down there hit him up on radio, said, did you hear that? He said, yes, I heard that. He goes, what did it sound like? He said, sound like he said, I don't know, man, it sounded like a woman screaming. He said, but it sounded different than a woman. He said, that was loud. And he said, man, I picked up my pep to my step. And he said, I'm getting to my deer stand as quick as I can. And that was a day that they never seen a turkey, not a deer, he called me, he said, Daddy, we ain't seen nothing. I said, man, you see a doe? Nothing. He said, they come out on the other side all the time of that man's property? Not today. I thought, this is weird. When they're around, it seems like there's not going to be any animals, or the animals are going to be skittish. So the rest of that year, nothing happened. And then last year, I was hunting the backside of the farm. Now, let me rewind. Not this past turkey season, but the one from 2019. My son went, because there's a gate to the back part. And you drive down the road and you go in the back. Well, as my son was pulling into that gate to unlock it, he turned around and looked, and the field across the street, whoever owns that property, he seen something black walking down the tree line, and it went in and it came back out, and he said it was walking on 2 legs, and it went back in. And he said, I unlocked the gate, and he said, oh my, not again. So he hunted for a little while, and it just kept playing on his mind. He went home. The following weekend, he goes up there, and he's got a friend with him. And they hunt, and as they're going out, my son gets out to unlock the gate, and his friend told me, well, this is what Casey told me. He said, I went and unlocked the gate, and he said, I come back and said, his buddy said, man, you believe in, the Bigfoot things? He said, the Bigfoot things? He said, why? He goes, Bubba, when you got out and went to unlock that gate, something over there on that property line right there next to yours, he said, walked. He said, I'm not going to, it walked. It was watching you unlock the gate, and it walked like it was going across the street. And Casey said, oh man, because the week before he had seen it across the street walking, but it was off in a distance. So that really got him. He didn't even hunt the following weekend, because he's thinking, okay, this thing is moving from this farm to this farm at this time, this farm to this farm. All right. We hunted, and we hunted in deer season. Nothing went on till gun season, and I was in a deer stand, and my son was he's probably about 100 yards way up in the thicker of the woods. We were hunting hardwoods. We weren't hunting the fields this day. And as we finally got, I think it got about 9:30, 10 o'clock. I hadn't seen anything. He hadn't seen anything. I got whistled at. And I stopped, and I'm sitting in a deer stand, and I'm like, and it was just another, and then over to probably 2 o'clock, the identical whistle. And so I grabbed my Casey. He said, "Yeah, Dad." I said, "You whistling at me, man? You already getting out of the deer stand?" I said, "No, Dad." He said, "I'm still sitting up in here, man. I said, "Man, something's whistling at me." And I said, "It ain't far." I said, "It's right dead in front of me." And went over to the right, whistled again. And I told him, I said, "Man, I ain't seen anything. Let's just go." So he came, I got down, and he asked me, "So where did you hear him whistling at?" I said, "Over there." And I said, "There's no houses way over." And I said, "If somebody wanted to, trespass and come in here, they're going to have to do some walking to get this far." And I said, I mean, maybe they're whistling because, hey, I'm over here, or they probably would have stood up and said, "Hey, don't shoot over here." But I kind of walked that way, but I had a feeling don't. I just had a feeling that don't go there. So I just turned around and I didn't say nothing to him. I just said, there was something over there, man. I said, "It whistled," and I said, "Let's go." And, he kept talking because he started having the flashbacks of, "Oh my gosh, is this thing back over here?" There was a man that it snowed just a little bit. It wasn't hardly nothing. Rained heavily, and this was 500 yards. No, no, I'm sorry, 5 miles from our farm. The guy came out of his house, walked in his front yard. There was 6 set of tracks in the mud that went in front of his yard. There looked like two adults and a juvenile. He said, "I'm looking," and he said, "I'm seeing these tracks go," and he said, "I got to go to work," but he said, I ain't never had nothing like this in my yard." He said the juvenile broke away from the adults and went to the left side of his house, and he said as he went around, looked like it joined back up. So it just broke away from the two, what he thought was adults, because they had the bigger feet, and joined back up with them. And he said they went towards the creek. And Ronnie, yeah, Ronnie got the pictures of that. And the guy laid down a $20 bill, and that shows you how much bigger that is, a $20 bill. So
Correct.
we still think that this is a
family unit.
Yeah, I think this is a seasonal deal. I really do. I think they know when hunting season comes. I think they know we're not supposed to be up there, and that's when they kind of hang out. Because
Well,
now,
you and I talked about a month ago on the phone, and that's when I first invited you to come on the show, and you accepted, and you told me the story and everything, and I told you then, and I still believe that you guys have kind of developed like a mutual respect with
yeah,
one another between you and the Sasquatch. It gets free food every time you kill a deer. They get a gut pile. They don't mess with you. You don't mess with them. And it's kind of like this is all speculation on my part, obviously, because I don't know, but that's what it sounds like to me. A live and let live kind of thing y'all got going on.
I agree. I agree, because this is what we did. Is we started 2 years ago, mainly even last year at the early beginning of season. When we got the deer, I took and field dressed it in the middle of the field, and that gut pile stayed. And you go back, 2 or 3 days later, it's still there. I told Casey, I said, "I don't think this wants to be out in the open." I said, "Let's take it back up here to where we used to." The following deer, What do you think happened? We went, came back, and it was gone.
Yep.
I didn't go back in them woods. I still don't go back in them woods. If it doesn't bother us, it doesn't growl at us, it doesn't throw pine cones or anything at us, okay, I'll leave you the liver. I'll leave you the heart. Go ahead. We'll work together on this. I'm not, showing you any aggression. I see you. I'm not going to raise my gun because I know what that's going to cause. I'm not going to whip out my phone. I know what that's going to cause. It's just going to be a mutual. It's just,
Yeah.
my son killed one of his biggest deer 2 or 3 years ago. In fact, it's on the wall right there, and it was down in that field. And I told him, I said, "Man, you got a big buck." I said, "Let me go get the truck." My dad stayed with him down there. I went to get the truck, and as soon as I got out of the field and I got into the logging road, my truck was probably parked about 30 yards up. As soon as I got out of there, I smelled the horribles. I mean, horrid smell. I've smelled a coyote after I've shot him. They stink, but it smelled something worse than that. And I felt, get to your truck now. Don't look left. Don't look right. Go to your truck now. And I did tunnel vision. And I just went, and I looked at the logging road, and I didn't look left. I didn't look right. And I got in the truck, and I went down there and got the deer. And as it was coming out, I told him, I said, when I was coming up here to get this deer, I said, "Usually, man, I'll come and see if anything else is, maybe around, because I still got my gun." Which I didn't have my gun. I left it down there with them. But when I got up there in the woods, in the logging road part where the woods are at, I just felt, go to your truck, get it, go do it. Don't just go. Now we've done some dozier work up there on the logging road because it was getting in bad shape. The logging road is wider. That tree that it was hidden behind is no longer there. Because we had to do something with that logging road. And when we did that, we pushed over a lot of stuff. I've seen where it looks like they've used some of that, where we pushed over trees. There'll be trees, but up underneath it's real clean, like it uses the top branch to stay under and maybe hide from the weather. So again, maybe that's mutual respect. You help us, we'll help you. We've never bothered you. We won't bother you. But now, as of today or yesterday, my son went up there. Last year and this year, we've had our logging road with a tree in the middle of it. This year, it was 2 trees. And my son went up there yesterday and took a chainsaw and had to cut 2 trees out of the logging road. Like I say, Lebanon got hit bad with that tornado that came out of Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
I knew there was insulation in the trees. You can see pieces of people's, roofing in the fields after it happened. But and to me, 2 trees, and I guess I should have asked him to go look and see if it looked like the roots had been pushed, or if maybe lightning had hit it. But of course, it was warm yesterday. He wanted to cut them, pull them out of the logging road, and get on home. He didn't put too much in there. Yeah. If I was him, I ain't gonna stick around either after what he's probably seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When your son had his encounter, his visual encounter back when he was a youngster, there's no doubt in my mind that if that thing wanted them kids, it could have had them. Mm-hmm. So they're not messing with you guys, and you guys aren't messing with them. It sounds like you got a pretty good thing going, and that encounter happened in July, you said, right?
July 2010.
And deer season is when? November, December, January?
September. So
several months apart. So that leads you to believe that if it's a family unit, they're staying there year round.
Yes.
and there's a lot of land up there, right?
Oh yeah, because I mean, next to us, which now the farm that I think this thing came from when they were bush hogging over there, like I said, that farm was left alone for 2 years, grew up. There's pond over, they have water over, they could have had food. We never hunted over. This thing could have stayed in there and been undetected for a long time. But now that farm, the guy sold it, and he sold it for quite a bit of money. And some guy from Gaylord bought it, and now that place has a runway for an airplane down the middle of it, and there's an airplane hangar there, which kind of, we weren't too happy about it because what the heck's going to happen when you got airplane going in and out of there? Deer going to leave, or eventually, hopefully, they'll get used to it. But
Yeah,
didn't hurt last year because we
that's good.
did pretty well.
So, Paul, with the time lapse from the time this farm was converted to an airstrip and all, have these creatures been showing themselves on your property more before that or after that's taken place?
That's a good question. Really not been a noticeable change. I guess we'll have to see, because last year's when they got it all done and got the airplane hangar.
Right.
Yeah, I guess we'll see now. Last year, my son said that the deer were still coming from there a lot of the times. So, but as far as anything, I think it has moved to the back. I think that pushed it to the back. I think that's why I was whistled at. I think that's why my son had seen it on the backside on somebody else's property walking. And of course, his friends see it, stand there watching my son unlock the gate. And, he said, man, this thing was so fast after it looked at, watch my son unlock the gate. And of course, it looked at him in the truck because he's standing there, he's sitting there wide eyed looking, what am I looking at? And he said it turned its head, and he said within 2 steps it was gone. It went down in a ditch, and he said, I'm thinking this thing was, what did I just see? And so I still think I think it's moved more to the back this turkey season.
Well, when you and I spoke a few weeks ago, I offered for my team to come up there if you could get it cleared for us to come up there and do an investigation. I mean, we'll get out there, and you're welcome to join us. We'll camp out, stay all night up there, and we got equipment up there. And if we camp, it's been our experience that these things, they can't help themselves. They're curious. They'll come around. Right. So if you can make that happen, man, we'll be happy to get up there and do it.
Yeah, I'm still working on that, so hopefully we can get that. Here it is, May. Hopefully we can. I like to go up there like we did when we're not supposed to be up there, and because that's where we're at. And you may get more activity.
Yeah, and
back has cows on it. So you have, the calves sometimes dying. So there they've got food there. Some cows, calves don't make it through. You still have coyotes, that. So, and I've heard that these things follow coyotes, or they're sort of like wherever you got coyotes, you're probably going to have a Bigfoot, is what I've heard.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think you're right. All right, buddy, it's coming up on an hour, believe it or not, man. I tell you, time flies by when you're talking about the big guys.
Oh yeah. Man, it's been fun. I hope I could answer all the questions and give you, accurate details of what happened. And my son, he would be here, but he's still He still doesn't want to talk about it, because when he does get to talking about it, and he remembers how and what it looks like, then here we go. I don't know if I want to hunt, and I just try to, don't think about it, because
Yeah.
what you're going to do when you think about it, you're going to be looking over your shoulder all the time when you're hunting, and not concentrating on hunting. You're worrying about being hunted.
Yeah. Obviously, I've never been through what he went through, but from what I've heard, some of the best therapy out there is to just talk about it.
Yeah.
Talk about it with as many people as you can, and then make you feel better. But like I said, I can't speak for that, but
Talk
that's just
about
what I've
it
heard.
to the where that I know exactly what happened, and I still talk to her, and and I still I'm like, you were seeing it first, and I'm like, gosh, that had to be exciting to see something looking at you from a tree, but scary at the same time. You've never been on this farm. You know a little bit about where the pond is. You know a little bit about where, and you first time you come on this farm, you see something like that. Wow.
Yeah. But Ricky, you got anything for Paul before we let him go?
And Paul, you said that this started back in 1998.
Yeah. We started hunting in 94. And it started about 97, 98. We started seeing our gut piles disappearing.
Right.
And some years it would happen, some years it didn't.
So this activity for what, 22, 24 years now on the same property. So that tells me that these things basically are hanging in that area.
Yeah, they're raising a family. It sounds like. I mean, there's a couple generations there on that farm.
That's what Ronnie told me. She said, I think that they do a 5-mile circle from farm to farm, and yours is one of them. And when it gets hunting season, they go to the places that aren't allowed any. We don't allow any hunting.
Right,
Which
right.
Yeah. So,
yeah, these things are smart, man. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, they of course, since there's not a lot of mountainous area there, it's all flat and fields in Lebanon. They could see you coming.
Yeah. All right, Paul. We appreciate it, buddy. And again, you and I, we'll stay in touch and see if we can't get something worked out to get up there and do it overnight and see what we can find out.
Sounds great, guys.
All right, buddy.
Yeah, thank you for being on the show tonight.
Thank you, buddy. All right, what do you think about that, Ricky?
Hey, man, I'd like to get up there and check it out.
Yeah, he's working on it. He told me a few weeks ago when we talked that he thought that he might be able to get it done, but another big name organization. He told me before. I'm not going to mention any names. I don't want to get anybody in trouble. But another big name organization wanted full access to it, just themselves, and the people wouldn't go for that. So the organization backed out. They didn't want nothing to do with it because they couldn't have their way. And so that kind of left a sour taste in the people's mouth. So he's having to work a little bit, but I'm staying optimistic that he'll get it done and we'll get a chance to get up there.
Okay.
All right. You got anything before we get off here? And when we get done, hang on a minute. I got to talk to you about something. But
Okay.
You got anything else?
No, nothing other than, folks, if you encounter these things, even with Ron, with the Paul's encounter and his son's encounter, these things, you might have this happen to you. But then again, we don't know what triggers these things. We don't know what triggers their emotions, what actually pisses these things off. So please, if you have an encounter with them, just back out and let them have the woods. It belongs to them.
Yep, you say it every week, and it's great advice. Very well said, Ricky. Everybody, listen to what Ricky says. Back out of there, guys. Don't need to be a hero. And Everybody check out the website, mannimalresearch.com. Hit that subscribe button if you don't care. Everybody take care of each other. Take care of yourselves. Be good to each other. And I want to thank everybody once again for stopping in. We sure do appreciate it, guys. And until next time, y'all be good. We'll see you.
Thanks, guys. Good night to everybody.